Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because, folks, life's too short to be miserable. Hey, yo, Inspiring Possible people. Welcome back to another episode. I hope wherever you're at in the world right now, things are looking up and possibilities are shaping up. But we always will help you along the journey, give you a little bit of inspiration. And so, if you are today thinking to yourself, man, maybe I found myself on a pathway where sometimes I feel like I'm not really able to show up fully as myself, or maybe I just feel like I'm almost living two different lives and I just want to figure out a way to move forward. And maybe it's that you need courage, or maybe you need support, or maybe you just need something to help you along the way. Then today you have came to the right place, because I have a special guest and author in the house who recently just released a Amazon #1 bestseller, Us and Yet, a powerful book on how to rise beyond traditional roles at home and at work. And if you are tired of being stuck in a traditional role, then this is something that you might want to listen to on how to figure out how to break through that. So I'm really excited to welcome Josee Tremblay to the show.
Hi.
Welcome. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how this whole book, because I also know that you are an amazing trailblazing leader in the world of STEM as well. So how did we get to today?
So I had a long career. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, and I had a long career in the energy sector mainly. I'm currently a principal with the Strategic Decisions Group, and we do decision quality consultancy. My career has been one in a non-traditional field because when I graduated Finn University, we had less than 10% women at the table.
Yeah, I
And
can imagine there probably wasn't. When I'm thinking about this, my dad's actually in engineering, but more the civil side of things, and it's a very, still to this day, male dominated field,
Exactly,
engineering, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt like we were making progress for women in the science and technology and mathematics department, but not enough. And I was seeing so many people ramp off between 25 and 45. And I started really doing some deep thinking as to what were the causal effects, what was the fact, what were the factors that were causing this exit and premature exit, because we're not at retirement in the 25 45 range. You still have a long career ahead if you find
And were they
ways
just
to
changing fields? They were just changing fields as a whole, or just exiting in general?
they exit. Often they will exit because the years where you start having a family, you start making compromise. Maybe you have to move around the world to pursue careers, and then the couples will look at both sides, and our equity in terms of dollar per hour spent is often lower for women, just by virtue of maybe some of the circumstances that we live in. So we're looking at about 84 cents to 86 cents on a dollar right now for salary parity. So when you start looking at that, and you have to make a tough choice of saying, okay, which career is going to take over relative to our family units, often the decision will be made to, hey, listen, like, take it full throttle. I'll stay home and I'll support, the family unit. And more often than not, it's the women who decide to do that. And basically to the detriment of the whole society, because you think about the women who studied engineering, but any kind of pursuit, whatever their passion was, you end up having doctors ramping off because they have too much demand on their family and schedule. So I started really dissecting what were the actual key elements that cause people to ramp off, not just women, but men as well. But we found that there were more people ramping off when they ended up being in a non-traditional, what I call non-traditional fields, where they were a minority at the table. And then you start exploring, okay, what is happening there? Is there more things that are from a societal, but also from a community perspective, that elements that are missing for them to have the resilience that they need to continue their career and pursue their passion? And you start asking the questions. And then I explored that and realized that we often will be adaptive to the environment that we're in. And we need to adapt maybe a bit more than the next person just because you're different and you think differently. And so you're a little bit of a, maybe not contrarian is not the right word because that's a little bit more on the negative side, but you do have different perspectives sometimes and you do have a different point of view. And if you express it in a way that is going to be not well received, if you don't have that skill set to communicate, I call it across gender lines. If you don't have that ability, then you end up being pushed aside, not be part of the community. And we all know that we have a huge, huge need for a sense of belonging. So that kind of insidious circumstance really creeps up when you're in a minority setting. And I think learning how to communicate across gender lines, learning how you're received as a minority at the table, all these things really help improve the resilience that you might have in pursuing your career long term and not wrap off.
Yeah. Well, how did this show up for you along your journey? Because I know that part of the reason I'm guessing that you're passionate about, just being able to provide information, perspective, education on what are some of the struggles that individuals might have when they are maybe in a role that is not dominated by their gender, right? Tell me a little bit about your story and how this came to be, or how did this affect you and your career path? Because again, like we talked about initially, you were entering what I'm assuming at the time, or even at that point that you entered, male dominated, which was different than your maybe like your experience. So maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking the question because we were sharing when we were preparing from this podcast how vulnerable you end up being as an author, just sharing your own journey. And one of the things that I really did not, it didn't rub me the wrong way when I first learned about this construct that I shared in my book in one of the chapters. I call it, it's my chapter 2, and it's about the power in our archetype. And when I think about an archetype, I think about more the gender archetype. So if you show up in the world as a woman, then you have to know what are the winning traits for leadership for your own area of activities. And I this was in my late 20s. I was surrounded with men. I had a men leader and my CEO was a man. So everyone in the company that were above me were men. And my team was male dominated as well. I had a senior geologist on the team, but I was very much the only woman at the table often. And I attended a luncheon where a Harvard study was shared talking about what are the winning leadership traits for the two genders. And at the beginning, I thought, okay, I'll name you the two genders traits. The male gender traits that were the most successful were competitiveness and assertiveness. So, two traits that are super looked upon, both by men and women in the society, when they see a gentleman come up and they show that presence of being, let's win together, or these kind of
Or we're
uh,
gonna
uh,
figure out how to get
assert-
ahead. Yeah. That
yes,
competitiveness, like,
exactly.
if these are our competitors, we're gonna figure out how to do better than them, and let's go for it, guys. That kind of
Yeah,
leader, yeah.
let's kill the competition, or these kind of statements
Yeah.
are super well received, and we love our male leaders to exhibit them. So it's an actual superpower if you're actually a authoritative type of gentleman who will show up inspiring others to kind of follow suit and follow them. So it's actually, so assertiveness and competitiveness are actually superpower traits for male in leadership roles. Conversely, though, it could be a challenge for you if you're a woman, and it doesn't have to be always 100%. true. Like what I'm saying here is a generalization. But the two traits, and this is where at the beginning I took a little bit of a step back. I thought, oh my God, like I can't be assertive and competitive and win at this game. If you want to say the leadership, pursuit. For me, what I learned that day was that two traits that are really well looked upon if you're a women leader is competency and, are you ready for this? Warmth. So warmth and competency. So
Complete opposites. I mean, like, you're thinking assertive. I mean, when you think of assertive people, I'm not thinking about warm people. I'm thinking about, like, I will get to the finish line before you, and I'm gonna make sure you get there with me. Like, that kind of I'm gonna say my mind, even if it offends. I'm gonna speak my truth no matter if you like it or not. Like, when I think of assertive, I think of that. Which is not the same as warmth of like, "Oh, I'm understanding how you can maybe feel that way," or, "Please come and sit at the table. We'd love to have you." Like 2 different worlds. And I'm learning this because I didn't know this. This is really fascinating to me. And then we have competitive, so it doesn't matter how competent you are, just as long as you can inspire people to compete against each other or to compete for the organization, whatever, and they're competitive in their own right to do better than the other person. But for women, it's important for us to appear as competent in their role if they're leading people. Fascinating.
yes. So you double down on these. It doesn't mean that you're not competitive and you don't want to
Or
win.
assertive, yeah.
Yeah, and assertive, but then it is actually just how do you authentically embody these two traits and almost put them a little bit on overdrive? Like sometimes we deal in engineering, we often deal with serious circumstances. So as you can imagine, it's more and more difficult maybe for a woman to show up as warmth if you're dealing with, I don't know, a safety system or what. So you're
And if this
starting.
fails, everything's gonna blow up is what I go into my mind. Like, if this safety system fails, then we're gonna have a big issue on our hands with whatever.
Exactly. So the warmth and competency needs to be done in the way that is going to be well received. And you need to kind of find your way to do that authentically at a meeting, even in under circumstances that are more precarious or difficult. And then you start extrapolating this to, let's say, an emergency response team. So, how do you actually lead an emergency response team if you're a man? And how do you lead an emergency response team if you're a woman? And my thought, and I had a lot of hypotheses going into this book. I thought, okay, these are biases or things that we assume and we take for granted. And I was trying to think, okay, am I taking this for granted just because it's the way it is? Or am I taking it for granted because there's more underneath that I'm not understanding? So I often explore these dichotomy, if you will. And one of which for me was being an incident command on an incident event. So you're on an incident response team and you have to be the incident command. Is it better to be a man or a woman? You start asking these questions. If you want to be warm and competent and still do give very precise directive short term, like you don't have a lot of time when you're responding. So you need to really be like almost command and control. One would be
Yeah,
kind
and
of the
decisive and
description.
assertive. This is what we need to do now. Yeah, how do you combine the 2 when you really need to be in this skill set right here or in this way of doing things? Yeah.
Exactly. So I started asking myself which one is most efficient or are there, things that but it turns out that we equally have the ability to do it well. And there's lots of research that has been done on incident command. And it's a myth that men may not be as suited to be incident commanders. They're actually just as suited. They just come at it from a different angle. Sometimes they will approach it in a different way, but the actual outcome are no weaker. So it's these kind of things that it's important for people to share and to maybe open their mind up to that diversity of thought. And one thing that I do cover in the book as well is what are the statistics in terms of organizational success when you do bring the diversity element to the table. And in a world where sometimes, it's difficult to push yourself beyond the comfortable to integrate people that may not be the same as the other people at the table. So really make the effort to have an inclusive environment. You reap benefits that are really tangible as a result, but it's uncomfortable at the beginning because you have to open your mind to inclusion, and inclusion doesn't necessarily always feel comfortable. So you need to really open my mind to do it. But once you do, the benefit that comes is are really extraordinary. And I will put that caveat that if you don't have a minimum number of people that are in that minority group, the one, you know, token person at the table out of 10, it's just not enough for them to have the momentum to make a difference. So the threshold is around 33%. So if you have 33%, roughly between 30 and 35%, if you achieve that kind of ratio, then your minority group is starting to have a positive impact on the outcome. Below that, they're helping, but they're not. It's more difficult to quantify.
Yeah, this is really interesting because, I'm thinking I actually have the flip side of things, okay? In my world and in my business, right? It's actually female dominated. And I'm actually thinking of our team makeup right now. We're about a team of right under 20, 19, I think right now. And we only have one male on our team, right? So I'm thinking to myself as you're saying these things, I'm like, "Woo, we need to get a." We've tried to attract more, but it's been hard because we are, more female dominated. And I don't know if we need to do our messaging differently. We want the guys to come, but we just haven't had one join our team. But I think as you're talking about that, what I'm taking away from what you're saying is just understanding how no matter what kind of workplace setting or what work that you're in, understanding that we each receive information or we perceive leaders differently, sometimes based on whether they're male and female. And then if we're really wanting to create inclusion in our workspaces or even in community teams, there really needs to be at least more than 1% of the team makeup to really have the outcomes that you would want because of those diverse perspectives. And I'll be honest with you, just I even think about personality types. I've had different personality types on my team. And like you said, there have been times where it has been very uncomfortable for me, okay, as a leader. There's some days I'm like, can't we all just agree, but in the end, it's actually brought a different perspective from having such diversity of personalities and perspectives on a team to help get to a certain result because they see things in different ways than you do. Just kind of like, I'm guessing that was your experience. I know we're starting to talk about your story when you got into this world, that you probably brought a different perspective than maybe other people on your team had. And I think that can be of incredible value, but you have to have leaders that can hold the space for that diversifying perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not just even leaders, but it's also the team. Like sometimes, how is the power dynamic within the whole team, and who are your allies around the room? And when you're in a minority circumstance, it's even more important to understand who are your allies around the table, and how to actually not just know who they are, but to actually seek them out, enlist them in being your ally. And sometimes you have to have very vulnerable conversations in the background, especially for teams that you're meeting on more than one occasion. Let's say like a team you would meet monthly or weekly or quarterly, like you have a long standing relationship. It's more difficult to create allyship when it's a just one off. But when you start having a team where you evolve relationships around and you build culture, then it's really possible to be intentional about who at the table could potentially be your ally, and list them in the background to say, hey, listen, like if I'm showing up at the table and it sounds a bit too harsh, or if it's a bit too overt when I kind of make comments, don't maybe support me if you can find a way right on the moment at the moment, on the spot. But if not, just take me aside, the next day or something, and then say, hey, Jose, when you said something like that, it came across as like very direct. And so then over time, you learn, oh, they're on your side because they kind of are observing how you're behaving within the team. But then it also helps you adapt to what is being well received and what is not. And it's really powerful to have allies. And some of the allies I made in my career, I don't work with them anymore, but they're still my allies because I could phone them and say, "Hey, listen, like Joe, I haven't had that issue in a long time, but you remember when we were together? Like, how did we navigate this? How did we break through?" So like then they become your ally, like for the rest of your time, on Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and how did this I'm curious because I'm kind of hearing some things, but I'm curious how this showed up for you and your experience. It almost sounds like you had to figure out a way to get allies, or did the allies come for you?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. Some allies I had to figure out who they could be at the table and really took them aside and whether it was over lunch or something and say, "Hey, I'm really trying to bring together, a different perspective, but sometimes I know it can come across as more difficult to hear, and I don't want to be always the contrarian. So I want to be a kind of part of the team, and I want to create the right positive outcome for the whole group. So can we actually work together? And you can coach me if you see that it doesn't come across. And I really appreciate you supporting me in this because I'm aware that my positioning is very unique at the table, and as a result, your inputs would be greatly benefiting to me. And then they often like I don't think I can think of a time that when I vulnerably share that intention with someone that they would say, "Oh no, I don't want to help you out." Like, it didn't happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone wanted to help out.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you're right. I think there's sometimes when we're bringing a perspective that may not be the traditional perspective or the overarching perspective of the group, and we're trying to push against the grain is what I would call it. But we still know that the way that we're thinking about this could add unique value to the group as a whole. I've never thought about it in that way, but, it is just asking people to almost their permission to give feedback as you're trying to pretty much say, "This is my perspective," especially when it's not getting well received by the individuals that you're trying or the people because I do know there's some tables where people just aren't listening to different perspectives. They have their blinders on and I wish this wasn't the way in the world, but we all do it, and we all have our, I guess, like, gaps where we're not necessarily being as open as we should. I mean, because we have our belief systems or our opinions or even our prejudices or perspective, whatever you wanna call it. But we have our blinders on, and we can't really see other things outside of that thing that we're looking at. But you know that you have something that could really help them move the needle in whatever goal that you're working towards as a team or outcome you're trying to get as an organization or in your role, this can affect this type of change. How can you get individuals that can provide you feedback, is what I'm hearing you say, on the delivery so that what you're communicating is received in the way that you're intending it? And that can be hard, So, but I never thought about, yeah, just get people on the team, just say, listen, can you give me feedback so I can make sure that I'm not missing something? Or maybe if I just highlight it in this way, it's gonna sound different than what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm hearing you say is that that has worked for you in your roles as you've, kind of whether it been in leadership or whether it been an entry level when you were trying to find your way in around this type of industry.
Yeah, I think it worked in two ways. It created allyship. And for them, they saw the benefits of being maybe opening their minds to having different perspective at the table as well. So I hope that, I made a positive difference along the way because I was a part of larger decision as a result, a larger, better and bigger table to have more and more influence across, large parts of organizations. So that's
Yeah,
that.
but you brought something when you said something earlier about how we all just want belonging in community, and I think sometimes it gets mixed up as like, okay, we want the belonging, but it's okay to have friction in community. But how can we have individuals that can give us feedback so that we can have the best possible delivery? of an idea or perspective or things of that nature. And I can think about early on in my career. Now, I'm in a way different career, mental health, okay? And I used to be a leader of a group of individuals who would go out into the home and community based settings to provide, I guess, let's just call it for the sake of this podcast, mental health support. And they might not have been formally trained mental health professionals, but they had some degree of training and they were there to provide kind of support to individuals that might be experiencing different varies of life struggles. And I remember one time I had a team member come back to me and he was very frustrated because the individual he was working with had belief systems or perspectives where they were very closed to any feedback. We'll just say that for the sake of it. They were closed to feedback. And overall, their perspective was one way where he was trying to introduce maybe a different way of thinking. And he was frustrated because he's like, listen, I just don't know if I'm gonna be able to break through with this family or this individual because I'm trying to show up as myself. I'm trying to offer this perspective. I'm trying to help them, but they have views about me, maybe because of my gender or the way that I look or how I'm presenting myself. And, when we were talking through this, it was really hard because what we were trying to do is I was trying to encourage him, like, no, you can set boundaries in this. There are certain behaviors you don't have to accept from this person we're trying to help. If they don't want the help, then they may not be ready. And so that's okay too. But if they're still allowing you to show up to come see them, right? Then maybe we can find a way where we can communicate to them what you're trying to help you receive the outcome with them that you're trying to make through this experience. But I think oftentimes when things are foreign to us or we have preconceived ideas about somebody, whether they be through gender, I mean, I can think about all kind of things, race, religion, sexuality, whatever. We can run the gamut where we perceive things about people based off of who they are, their industry, what they know, what they don't know, all the things. It sounds like what you have found, one of the concepts you found is super helpful, is to find people in these spaces and places that can then create some type of allyship with you to help move the needle for the predominant train of thought in whatever space you're in.
Absolutely. And I think it's important. And the more and more people are intentional about integration of people within them, they start noticing. And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. So once you notice that maybe Joe is dismissive to Annie around the table, it becomes so overtly obvious. But unless you actually are intentional about being an ally to Annie, you wouldn't see it. So being an ally means that your eyes are wide open because you're observing the dynamics in the room, and then you end up being able to intervene or support and lean in where needed. So you do get, to me, many of the biases are like that. Is like once
Mhm.
you,
Bias, that's the word I was looking for earlier, thank you. I'm like, "What word am I looking for?" Bias.
yeah, many of the biases are like that. It's almost like they're biases and they're unconscious biases. We don't even know they exist, and we assume that what we look at is the reality, but behind it all, there's a whole bunch of elements at play that you are not even acknowledging. And then once you see, you can't unsee them because now you see them everywhere.
I don't know about you, but I've had experiences where I've had the opportunity to sit at tables with people where our intention was to share experiences from that person's perspective. It was no judgment, no saying whether your experience was right or wrong, not any of that. It was just I remember it was like dinner or something, and it was a list of questions, and I did this a few times where pretty much it was intentional reflection on getting people to have these prompts to share their experiences. And when you sit down and take the time to listen to how somebody else is actually experiencing, maybe a room they go into or in a workplace, how they're feeling, whether or not they're being able to have the same, if they feel like they have the same level, whether I don't care if it's respect or say or whatever. Okay. It's you like you said, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and then once you see it, I think then that helps you also have the responsibility to even more so become an ally and help But it's something we don't always consciously walk around thinking of doing. As you're reminding me in this conversation, I haven't thought about those conversations or those tables that we've done a long time because in your everyday life, you're walking through your own lived experience. You're not always thinking like that. Okay. And like, again, when we were just even talking about the team, I probably have never really thought, oh, that one guy, because I mean, he does pretty much go well with our team, but I have never set to think and ask him, "How has your experience been with a predominantly female team, and what are some things that you feel, that you're able to say? What are some things you're not able feel like you're not able to say?" Or just any questions like that to understand somebody and how they're feeling, either included or, a part of the conversation. Yeah,
Hmm. And they would appreciate that very much if you were to approach that person who is a minority at the table, just to see how they feel, because there's a lot of degrees of adaptation required, and almost I'd call it emotional intelligence that needs to be built in on overdrive when you're surrounded by people that are just different than you are. And as you said, it works for maybe uh, culture. Like if you come from a different country or a different culture, it works for gender. There's so many aspects of,
different things.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, that
When
could
I can even think about
could
our cultures are probably very different and probably even the way that, there are probably some similarities, but there are probably some differences in how, whether things we were raised with, the type of expectations, cultural expectations in a room, things of that nature. It's always funny because I feel like I go some places and I'm country come to town. And you're right, that level of adaptation. In fact, I went to a conference or event just this past weekend in Miami, right? And just because that's a melting pot of different people, cultures, everything, and just trying to adapt to navigate. I might not have been doing it consciously, but I'm also in this room of people that I view a little bit more elevated than me. So how am I interacting with them? It's a whole dynamic, but I'm sure that's some of the stuff that your kind of book talks a little bit about. How do you be more aware, and then how do you integrate, but then how do you also bring yourself to the table too?
absolutely. And beyond that, I would maybe the tip that I would give is often your minority at the table, you need to amplify their voice because their voice is going to be much quieter, like, and not necessarily in terms of decibel, but much quieter than the rest, because it takes more courage to maybe step into conversations where you're the only person seeing the world in the way you see it. Again, part of the inclusion journey is to try to amplify those voices because they'll be harder to hear. And without being conscious, sometimes what I've seen at tables is that people will be dismissive of the quieter voices at the table. And that includes being dismissive of the people that are maybe part of the minority.
Yeah. Well, and look, I've even had to learn this in some of my teams and spaces because sometimes also the quieter ones might also just be the more introspective ones. And so sometimes the verbal processors in the room need to like be quiet for a minute so that the introspective people who are processing internally have a moment to get their thoughts aligned so they could provide their feedback and what they're thinking. And it can be hard if you're not understanding of the people on your team or in the space to allow to know what they need. But I guess what I'm hearing you say is, especially for people that are maybe in the minority in your team or even in your community, like that you might be volunteering with, in spaces of like that, almost over making more intention more than anything else to make sure that they have an amplified or maybe a space to share their perspective, even more so than maybe the majority of the room.
Hmm. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Well, okay. Along your journey, is there anything else that you feel like for listeners today, that you would really want to leave with them? Maybe it's something that's from the book or just something that you've learned along your journey that if you wanted to empower the listeners to give them one more piece of information, what do you think it would be?
The reason why I wrote the book in the first place was that I felt, seeing that we weren't making progress, I felt compelled to share some of the experiences that I had so others would not have to struggle through similar things as what I did. And I say I struggled, but I succeeded as well. So that's why I really thought, okay, this is working, so I should kind of help others. And
But you had to push through where some people are exiting is what I'm to bring it back to the beginning, the whole basis of this is that why are people leaving these professions prematurely in a lot of ways versus them being able to really, you know, yield their unique strengths, talents, gifts, perspectives to the overall whole.
absolutely. So the construct of the book was to share that expertise, but also was to invite others who are navigating careers, and not just careers, but also navigating in environments that are maybe different than they are, and they where they're a minority, to enlist them to share their experiences and what has worked for them, so we can all learn. So it's a continuous journey. I'm still learning every month about how do we actually fit in better when you're a minority. And I want to hear other people's voices around that. So that's why my last line in my book is over to you, because I'm just hoping that other people will pick up the pen and share, whether it's through podcasting or other media forms, to share their expertise and experiences, so we can all get better at it.
Well, and hopefully get better at it, and there's not so much, I would almost say, barriers for people to be able to integrate into whatever team that they're working in, because I do think that it sounds like a little bit from your experience that even though you figured out ways to overcome some of those barriers, there might have been more barriers or obstacles for you than there had been other people on your team. To be able to, whether it be to share their ideas or voice their opinion or be heard in a way that was received. And so it sounds like this book is just hopefully giving other people insight of not only how to navigate their own journeys, but also how to be able to be intentional about inclusion and allyship in their workplaces so that each voice can be heard and that we can have more productive, diverse teams that will help get to the goals, maybe in a way that the original primary dominant, I guess, group of people would have thought to get there. So,
Absolutely. And that's the superpower, I think, of diversity, is when you succeed at inclusion within a team, the outcome is much more creative, and probably ultimately has more sustainability, because you understand the many aspects of the people that you influence in your decisions. So there's a lot of qualities from that will be derived from having a diverse perspective at the table.
yeah. Okay. Well, if everybody's been listening and they're like, okay, now I need to get this book, where can they find us and yet, so they can pick up their copy?
Yeah, so the copies are on Amazon, or you can go to my website at www.ossandyet.com.
Okay, awesome. So, guys, we'll make sure that's linked up in there. Go get your copy. One final question. If you were to go back to younger you, maybe it's you when you were starting out in your career, or maybe it was younger you even before then. I mean, you can pick whichever phase of life you want to stop at. And maybe you were to give yourself one piece of encouragement, advice, something. What is the one thing that you would give younger you along the journey?
Don't be shy about pursuing your passion, and figure out the help you need to succeed. And when I say the help you need, is not just in your business and professional life, but also in your personal life. I think there's a whole segment of support that you need to succeed in pursuing careers, and especially for couples that are navigating dual careers. You need to really work hard at figuring out the help you need. But sometimes it comes in different forms, and be open-minded about where the sources of that help could come, but do look out for that, and don't ramp off. Just work at it. It's so I think you get so much reward from breaking through those challenges and barriers that might come your way. And when you look back, there's no regret. You just have achieved and pursued your passion. So Yeah, my young self, I would say, yeah, don't give up and do find the help that you need. And if you do find help and it's not the one that you need, then keep looking.
That's right. I would 1,000% agree with that. Because sometimes the first help you get is not the right help, and it could even be the fifth help you got is still not the right help. But you keep on looking, you're going to find the right help at some point. So, well, Jose, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And not only a lot of people they have their own journey, right, that they have to navigate. But you said, listen, I want to help other people navigate this a little bit better than maybe the experience that I had. So and also teach people how to make this environment a little bit more inclusive for all. And so you wrote a book, which I know was not an easy feat and it took a while and it was a very personal journey for you to put that out of the world. So I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you for not only just keeping to move forward, but also looking back and say, how can I support other people on this journey that we're all in. So, if you are listening, I like to leave you with one final truth. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I got from our conversation today, but you know what? I think Jose summed it up well. Listen, don't be shy at pursuing your passion. And folks, y'all know we talk about this on here, but get the help you need. Listen, you have people around you that can help you navigate life's hard, whether that be hard in the workplace, whether that be hard in life, whether that be hard in pursuing your passion. And there's people that want to support you. So be relentless in getting that help you need so that you can create whatever possibility you choose. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.